Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for taking the time to be here. I'm very excited to be here to talk about how autonomous security can help in today's threat landscape. As many of you are used to seeing a lot of information coming out about security threats, and there's a lot of ways to kind of solve that problem. And what we want to do in this session is to give you an idea of what are the opportunity you have using autonomous capabilities to solve that threat landscape. So just give some examples in terms of what you might be seeing in the news over the last many years. One example being in Japan in 2016, where a lot of the data from travel agencies using phishing attacks were compromised, around 8 million records, information like passport, travel data, credit cards. And that was just done through phishing, which can easily be prevented by a lot of the things we'll talk about later today. Second, around this idea of having distributed denial of service. Websites like Netflix, for example, sites like Yahoo, were compromised with a lot of these attacks where nobody could access those websites, and there was no easy way to stop that and prevent that attack in that time frame. And also people who were trying to access other websites were also having difficulty getting into it because of the millions and millions of push coming through this DDoS kind of attack. Third was around a bank in Bangladesh where $80 million dollars worth of currency was stolen using, again, malicious ways of getting into the system using compromised accounts for users. This could have been even worse if there was no ability, if they didn't have an ability to kind of prevent that. And this is, again, the idea that how do you use user behavior, understand what kind of information you want to collect, and how do you prevent that becomes an important part. So what's going on today in the industry, as many of you know, executives and CEOs have been asked to really innovate and improve the systems they have today and really make them efficient, be able to reduce the cost, and be able to have services which are very effective and efficient without, again, having to invest a lot. But the biggest one nowadays happening, and we're talking to more and more executives, where managing risk and having systems which operate 24/7 and are very secured has been one of the most important imperative today. And how do you really make sure that the risks are managed and you are not getting into any kind of compliance issues? Also, you are not getting any kind of fines by government agencies for sharing data or privacy information have been compromised. So managing risk is becoming a very, very critical thing as companies transform into digital companies. With the amount of information being collected and stored, managing risk associated with that is becoming a very critical imperative. Right? But it is becoming very difficult to do as well. If you look at the growing footprint, for example, right, you have a lot of now devices, like mobile devices, who are accessing the same kind of network. You're also seeing a lot of IoT sensor information and data being also used to be collecting and getting it all integrated together. A number of apps and users accesses, not just the on-premise apps, but also cloud apps. So suddenly you have exposure to a lot of your company data, corporate data being exposed through multiple environments. Some controlled by you as your enterprise in your own data center, some controlled by other vendors who are running your applications in the cloud. And the amount of data being created is quite a lot. The proliferation of data is becoming very difficult to manage. The regulation associated with that, with the things you heard today about GDPR and other country-based regulation in terms of what can get access, how do you prevent it, who's allowed to see it, how do you share it. So putting rules and policies around that is becoming very complicated for most of the enterprises to manage and keep up with. And the attackers, the hackers, and the folks who are kind of trying to get into the systems are getting very sophisticated. They're using a lot of machine learning, AI algorithms. They are also very well funded with cyber currency. Cryptocurrency is very easy to hire people in the dark web and be able to do and compromise the data and share it. It's easy to make money on this information as well, where you can go and sell that illegitimate information to other parties who might be interested in. Also, a lot of these hackers are trying to compromise the systems, really bring it down, as well as steal the assets associated with those companies as well. and the persistency in the attack and the approach and sharing of information across the hacker community is pretty prevalent as well. So the sophisticated attackers are making it even more difficult for a lot of companies to keep and protect their information. And organizations are becoming very vulnerable, right? The threat landscape is growing. It's very hard to know where you will get the threats from, what information, and who's trying to get access to it, and are you allowed to it or not, and how do you really keep track of that is a very difficult proposition. The technologies, as I said earlier, are moving very fast and evolving. How does an organization keep up with that and make sure that there's no downtime? Because you do want your system to be running 24/7. You want to be able to patch and update that environment on a regular basis without bringing it down. But that does create a lot of difficulty in terms of how do you apply latest patches in zero downtime kind of a mindset without really compromising the systems. And it affects the brand reputation if the systems are down or compromised. If you look at, for example, Equifax, which is a large credit card bureau in the US, when the data was compromised there, their stock fell close to 15% on the first day when the information came out into the market, and they still have not recovered. So it does have a big reputation issue for the company when this information goes out into the marketplace. So we have been doing a lot of work with a lot of companies to kind of figure out what are the key critical issues they are facing. We recently did a survey with KPMG. We interviewed 450 global practitioners of security and IT shops. Out of the 100 of them in Asia Pacific. And some of the information which we got back was very, very interesting in terms of the number one challenge for many of these companies today is around managing security events in the cloud. How do you really keep track of it? How do you collect that information? How do you manage it? And how do you really guarantee that there's no data leakage? 85% of the users cited more than half of the cloud data is sensitive. So a lot of times people think that the data which you have, which is sensitive, is only on-premise. But more and more with the proliferation of SaaS-based applications, as well as systems in the cloud, the data is available to users outside the sensitive data, right? A lot of times also the employees are violating the regulations and the policies inside a company, right? So 89% of concerned employees violate cloud policies. So you can set up all these policies, but how do you make sure that they're adhering to those policies is a big challenge as well. And no doubt things like GDPR impact pretty much every company out there. So take a look at this report at oracle.com/CTR. You get an idea of what kind of things your colleagues as well as companies like yours are facing today with cybersecurity as well as associated security trends. Associated with that, I think the information we get out of these things is important to really make sure you're putting the policies as well as the remediation systems to really keep track of that. So we talked about cloud being sensitive, the data being sensitive out there, but cloud also helps in many ways as well. One, the cloud vendors like Oracle has a lot of investment as well as know-how to really prevent a lot of the security issues you might be facing. There's a lot more ability to kind of collect information from other threats, share things between different customer data, which we understand in terms of what kind of things might be going in, and apply that policies and regulations into those environments as well. So the cloud vendors have expertise and ability to manage those security elements. We do focus a lot in the cloud around innovation and reducing the costs and reducing the risk I talked about earlier. And this also allows you to be able to focus in terms of building your business applications and systems without having to worry about some of the current security and management challenges. But if you look at some of these security challenges and what kind of approaches you require, one is around threat exposure, right? So 85% of the security breaches are happening with known patches and fixes available. So basically, it means that many enterprises, even knowing that their ability to fix those issues or holes in the system, they're not able to get to them. You're applying them manually. You don't have ability to do regression testing. Systems might come down, so you might not apply it. So even if you applied all these fixes, you will definitely protect your environment, but it's very difficult to do given that amount of volume of fixes available there and knowing when to do it and how quickly to apply that and not missing some of the key critical points and systems and environments in your infrastructure. So So this is exactly what happened with Equifax, where they had a fix for their server, which was not applied into the environment, and the hackers were able to use and compromise the system. So the threat exposure, making sure that you really apply all the fixes required. Second thing is around the limited expertise available in the marketplace today. The amount of need for folks with experience in cybersecurity and experience in general in security is pretty high. There are not enough people out there who can be hired and keep up with this demand which we're seeing. So that the expectation is around 3.5 million jobs around cybersecurity by 2021. And just not enough people out there who can do this work today. So this is, again, the idea that you need to go to vendors or companies who are really specializing in this thing, instead of trying to do it and learn it on the fly. Amount of alerts you are generating, the alert overload for anybody who's running systems today, I'm sure you can see that amount of events you're getting. It's around 17,000 alerts per week per enterprise. And only you're getting to 19% of them are reliable, and only able to investigate 4% of it. So you don't have enough staff, expertise, and ability to keep up with this alerts to be able to do something about it. So no use knowing there's a problem without having to without being able to solve it. So this becomes a big issue and requires a very different approach in terms of how we solve it. And the tools which we have today in many enterprises are very inadequate. In our research, we found 86% of the traditional tools are not sufficient to manage security across the cloud. Right? So you are really lacking capabilities and automation to be able to manage this process and be able to really have a system which is not vulnerable to these attacks. Right? So at Oracle, we have Larry Ellison, who's the CTO and co-founder. He talks about how this is becoming a war versus just kind of trying to have humans trying to fight the machines. It's really machines against machines, and automation being the primary way to really keep up with the issues you are seeing today with the attacks in the environments, right? So you really need to now start thinking about how do you use artificial intelligence and automation built on top of that to really protect your users, your applications, data, and infrastructure. With the amount of systems out there, and amount of users, amount of data being managed, there's no other way than having automation built into your environment, into your applications, into your systems, to really prevent any kind of issues you are seeing otherwise. Trying to do this manually is just a recipe for disaster. The thing you want to do is be able to bring down your mean time to detection, as well as mean time to resolution. And that really needs to be your goal when you're thinking about applying and making sure your systems are not vulnerable anymore. So how does autonomous security work? The way to kind of think about this is that you are able to now collect all the different kind of data coming in from applications, devices, from users, systems, and be able to classify all this data and normalize and be able to interpret this thing in real time as a single source of truth. You really need to be able to now take that information and parse it and really hone down to the area which it matters and be able to react to it. You can do on top of that ad hoc reporting, so you get an idea of what's going on and have an understanding of the system issues you might be facing, as well as detect anomalies in the systems as well. And once you detect anomalies, you can now do real-time remediation by pushing alerts into the users, automating the actions against the alerts based on the rules you might have set up, making sure that you're degrading the privilege for a user if you know it's a phishing attack and somebody's impersonating some other users who are not supposed to be kind of getting access to that environment as well. So you can easily do a lot of those rules-based and AI-based implementation once you have this data and you're able to process this real time. So the whole autonomous security uses AI/ML as a way to kind of parse and run algorithms on top of the information you collect, but also now builds a lot of real framework on it based on the learnings and experience you've had running these systems as well, and understanding what to do when and how quickly you can really remediate, right? So that you can now have a very, very quick detection of issue, as well as very quick resolution and proactively bringing down and making sure that the systems are locked in and nobody is getting access to it if it's been compromised. So autonomous security is really kind of giving you the speed, agility, as well as the risk mitigation when you are dealing with volumes of data, as well as systems and users who are coming in multiple ways into your environment. Trying to do this manually without automation will not work. And this is really something which you have to start thinking about when you're trying to make sure that you are not facing the similar kind of attacks which you're seeing nowadays in many other enterprises and systems out there. Right? So the requirements around that is really make sure that when you implement autonomous security, you're looking at one view into all the data, that you have a system where you can bring all this information into a place where you have a single source of truth. You can have a single pane of glass where you can review and monitor all this information and have ability to kind of know what's going on associated with your systems. You can do real-time analysis using AI ML algorithms and capabilities there to make sure that remediating potential issues. Really have a whole mindset around the complete life cycle around threat mitigation, where you were able to prevent, detect, respond, and predict sophisticated attacks. So it's not just about kind of really finding attack issues, but also be able to remediate as well. And then once you have all these things, you want to be able to now do adaptive response associated with that, really be able to share these things across heterogeneous environments as well. So there are systems which are across on-prem, cloud. You might be running multiple vendor technologies as well. How do you integrate them and make sure the information is shared across that? As well as multi-cloud environments where many customers we speak to are using cloud solutions from many vendors. And if you have a very siloed interface associated with that, there's no way to know what's happening across your systems as well. And then you want to be consistently monitoring as well as tracking any suspicious activities so that you have ability now to really prevent those things and remediate as well. So we have seen this kind of systems being used by many customers. Just some examples here, but again, you can hear a lot more across the industries in terms of how to prevent some of these things. Small companies like Outsourcing in Japan, they have a lot of seasonal workers and based on projects. They really needed to make sure that users' identities are really secured, and you have a single sign-on capabilities, and you have perimeter security associated with that as well. A company like Ricoh, which is trying to do, again, identity solutions across multiple apps, both on-premise and cloud. Daeco in Korea, they have a lot of training staff for education. And similarly, they want to have enhanced security using autonomous capabilities to make sure that users are legitimate and seasonal workers who work in that environment are getting the right kind of access. Right? So Oracle, again, from our side, we have been in the security space for many years. We've been delivering security software. Our database, as you know, has been known to be one of the most secure software out there. But beyond that, we've been also adding a lot of capabilities around cloud access security broker, technologies around identity and user management, things around system management and log analysis. So you're really thinking of this holistically instead of pieces of technology to really help you manage your security as well. So years of investment, 30 years of security and identity services out there, a lot of man years and person years of investment in our security software as well, and thousands of customers who depend on it today. So you can really start thinking about, when you're talking about autonomous security, you have to look at it a little more end-to-end, and you have to look at how this can work in a heterogeneous environment and how you can really apply it to your areas. So as a way to kind of look at security, you have to look at autonomous, really make sure it's hybrid and heterogeneous, as I talked about, where you have multi-cloud as well as very different systems being integrated together. Bring in machine learning to really automate your functions, but also really do these things in real time. And what is important is really to have a single pane of glass which cuts across all these different systems, so you get complete visibility across your environment, and you're able to really have a trust fabric kind of delivery where there's real-time access and information being delivered and being processed through your systems as well. So as next steps, I would encourage you to go and download the Oracle and KPMG Cloud Threat Report at oracle.com/CTR. Again, a lot of good insights from your peers so that you understand what to look for and how to manage this cybersecurity threats you're getting today, and really figure out what are the key critical areas to invest in and evolve from. We do have a booth over here if you want to see some demos and share ideas and learn from our experts in the security space. You can go to the demo booth as well. And we do provide trials of our software at cloud.oracle.com/tryit. Nothing to lose, is free. Try out some of the services we have to offer, like CASB and identity, access management, system management, so that you can now see how that can help you when you're trying to do this autonomous security and bring that into your environment as well. So thank you all for attending. Hopefully this is useful and you guys get an idea of what you can do to prevent some of these breaches which you might be seeing today and nowadays. So thank you again for coming.